Today we're going to get a little deep and we're going to talk about the sign. This theory comes out of Ferdinand de Saussure, French linguist, and he's interested in making meaning out of words, what he refers to as the sign. So he says the sign is made up of two parts: the signifier and the signified. So if we think about maybe in our most basic form, let's think about a traffic sign here. Now, I don't need to tell you, I don't even need to write words here. You already know what this signified means. So for a sign, then part one, the signifier, is the sign itself. And by this, we're talking about the octagon. It's red in color. We see them, all over the place. Now, if we talk about the signified for an octagon, we know that the sign is the shape and the color and those kind of things itself. But what is signified by that? What signified actually means to put an end to the motion of your vehicle, right? Motion stops in the vehicle. So the sign itself, the signifier, the metal piece there, the octagon, the red, the signified means to stop your vehicle there. But the sign, interestingly enough, and this is what Saussure argues, is that the sign itself is arbitrary, that it only refers to the meaning that we give it. Now, what does that mean? It means that we could have chosen a red triangle to mean stop, or we could have used a circle or some kind of rectangle, but instead we chose the octagon. And so the meaning of the sign is what we ascribe to it. We've all agreed that a red octagon equals stop. And that's what Saussure is after, is how is meaning created? And he argues that meaning is created by that what we have applied to a sign. So let's take a look at it a different way. Think of the word chair. If I say the word chair, think in your head, get an image of a chair. So for me, it might look something like this. Here's my chair. But for somebody else, it might look more like a camping chair, a director's chair. For somebody else, maybe it's more of some kind of reclining chair. Or for someone else, and bear with me here with my art skills here, but maybe it's more of a sofa or recliner or something like that. So what we have here is 4 different ways that this word chair can appear in terms of meaning. So we have the signifier, chair. The word chair hasn't changed, but the signified has. What does the word chair signify? To some people, it might mean a number of different things. Now, hopefully you're still with me, because I know this gets a little bit crazy. But what Saussure says is that the words are the same. So when we say the word chair, right, it means something that you sit on, of course, but the slipperiness, it allows for multiple meanings of that same word. Now, the word chair is relatively simple in the grand scheme of all of the words that we have in the English language. We can kind of generally agree what chair means, even though it may take different shapes. But what about words like love, or control, or wisdom, It's difficult. It's difficult for us to get all on the same page. I can remember being 14 years old, and the female friend of mine says, "Sure, I love you, but I don't love you." And I remember being a young man thinking, well, what does that mean? And so hopefully you see my point, that the definition or the meaning that we describe, I'm not talking about the Merriam-Webster definition, I'm talking about the meaning that we ascribe to the word itself shifts. And there's lots of room within that definition. So Saussure's concept allows for multiple meanings of words within a piece of poetry or a piece of literature. So if we're thinking about how to define words in a song or in a poem or in a story or a novel or a play, the meaning gets a little bit tricky. So let's take an example from poetry. If we look at a poem by Pablo Neruda, and if you haven't heard of Pablo Neruda, that's okay. He's arguably the most popular poet in the world right now, even though he's deceased. He has a poem called "Tonight I Can Write." Or because he was Spanish speaking, he actually titled it this. If you pardon my Spanish pronunciation, puedo escribir. And the first line of the poem is, "Tonight I can write the saddest lines." So if we were to look at Saussure, Saussure would be interested in how do these words represent what we mean by them, or how do we ascribe meaning to them. So tonight, we can probably assume tonight means this night, right? Or at the present, something like that. But what about this word? This is where it gets really tricky when you get into poetry. Tonight I can write. And what does "can" mean? It might mean you're able to. Tonight I'm able to write the saddest lines. Or Pablo Neruda, because he was Poet Laureate of Chile, he might mean tonight I'm talented enough to write. Maybe I've suffered enough that I'm equipped to write. Maybe I'm past the relationship or I'm over it and I am allowed to write the saddest lines. I'm giving myself permission to. And so you see, what we're talking about is that the meaning that we get from a text very much hinges on the meaning that we ascribe to the words. So again, the meaning of a text is the meaning that we ascribe to the words. So if you were like me in high school, I would read a poem and my teacher would ask what I thought it meant, and I would tell the teacher what I thought it meant, and the teacher would say, "No, that's wrong, this is what the poem means." And I would say, "Wait a second, that's not what I meant from it." And so we had a difference actually between what was signified versus what the signifier was. So the teacher was looking at the word, I was looking at the meaning that I ascribed to the word, and that explained the difference. So if you were like me, there is good news. That essentially, when we take Saussure into account, it frees us to ascribe the meaning. This is our meaning that allows us to interpret the poem how we choose, not necessarily how our teacher chose. Again, this is a very light form of Saussure, but hopefully that helps to understand. As you move forward, you might think about how words have multiple definitions or multiple meanings. Think about the meaning that you ascribe to the word, and think about what that does to the text and how it shifts around your understanding of the text.